There's a Land Rover that has bigger knobbly tires, a lorry, and a military truck that needs to go through a lot of mud, so it even has bigger and chunkier tires. But getting the tire size right, I think, is very important for the look of the car. And well, this is an example of a car you don't see very often in the UK. It's a Los Angeles Fire Department Chevrolet Suburban. It's a big off-roader. And I've built one of them. And I've got three options here with different wheel sizes. And which, well, if I go back, take a good look. So which do you think is the best? Can I have a show of hands for number one? Why do you think that's very good? Because it looks... Yeah? Can I have a show of hands for number two? That's very rewarding. And number three? The big guy goes for the small wheels. I think number two looks the most like the real ones. But there was a problem with this. Those wheels are not actually in here because they don't match any of the sizes that Lego make. So you might think I cheated. No, I got some wheels from something else, but I didn't, because fortunately Lego tires are very stretchy. So what I did was I used the central bit of one type of wheel and then stretched another tire around it, which really didn't fit, but with a bit of fiddling it did, and I created this sort of tire, and it works for this sort of car. So the wheels and the tires are, I think, very important for the overall look. Now, if I whenever I start building a car, I start by finding a lot of photographs and then working out how large it should be and what the tire size should be, and I record that in a little sketch. So these are examples of the sketches that I've made. You may vaguely recognize the ambulance here. And this was the first design for my Land Rover. So I work out this tire sizes and I work out how far apart the axles should be. And that's my fire engine. And this is basically all the design work I do. I look at photographs and then I make a little drawing and then I start building. So now moving on to the examples. So this is, I'm sure you recognize it. It's a sort of standard British ambulance. It's a Mercedes van. And one of the things that stands out, certainly for me as a non-British person on a British ambulance, is the markings. Ambulances in the Netherlands are yellow too, so that's not funny. But we don't have these markings on the side. They're called Battenberg markings, and they're designed to make the car look more conspicuous. So when I wanted to build a British ambulance, I knew this was an important thing for me. I wanted to have these markings. And also, the chevron markings in the back, they're also very typical for a British vehicle, and I wanted those as well on my model. So these were important bits. You can also see this vehicle is based on a van. So you have the cab that corresponds to the van, and then you have a wider body that was built onto the back of it. So the cab should be a bit narrower than the rest of the vehicle. So here's my Lego version of it, which is on show as well in the main hall. So I've got the body, and the slightly wider body, and the slightly narrower front. And fortunately, the wheel size on this did match something that Lego made. So these are standard wheels. And I made the Battenberg markings by figuring out how large they should be in bricks, and then building the color into that. The chevrons were a bit trickier, so they are a bit stepped. But this is my British ambulance, and also I wanted to build some ambulance technicians, so I have them as well. Obviously they're not very large, and they're a bit square. And there's a female ambulance technician there, and building a sort of feminine shape out of square bricks is a bit tricky, but she has some things that identify her as a female, I hope. Right, moving on. This is a fire engine, obviously. I didn't want to build just any old fire engine, I wanted to build one that has a ladder. And there are lots of fire engines that don't have ladders, they are just used for pumping lots of water and for carrying stuff around. But I wanted to have a ladder. And some of the prettiest ladder trucks that are used in the UK are used by the London Fire Brigade. And these are pictures that I found on the photo website, Flickr. These are the sort of pictures that I gather before I start building. You can see lots of details on the ladder and lots of details of the markings. This is my Lego version of it. It also has these chevrons in the back, and this particular fire engine doesn't have the Battenberg markings, but has a nice yellow and blue stripe running down the side. Unfortunately, again, Lego make tires of the right size. And the main challenge with this was, as I'm sure you can imagine, building the ladder. I wanted to have the ladder slide out like it does on the real vehicle. And if you try to do that with Lego, it might become too bulky. So the way I built it was by building things sideways. And if you want to have a closer look at that, you should sort of come round to my table a bit later, and I can show you how the ladder is put together. So that's the fire engine. This was the one that was the hardest. It's a police car. And one of the best sold cars in Britain is the Ford Focus. So I decided, if I'm going to build a British police car, it ought to be a Ford Focus, but that turned out to be very tricky because its shape is sort of a standard hatchback. So how do you make that look like a Ford Focus? I spent a lot of time trying to fiddle with the tail lights and with the headlights and with the radiator. I came very close to scrapping the whole project. Now here it is, also once again with the Battenberg markings and also sort of day-glow yellow along the roof. To make it more interesting, also the doors open and the boot opens. And once again I was able to use basically standard wheels, and I built a little policeman to go with it. So I hope you can see that these do look somewhat similar. This is a Land Rover, which I built together with the big guy over there. I was in the UK in July, and he knew about my emergency vehicle project, and we had a discussion, you know, what more emergency vehicles are there? You've got the police, you've got the fire department, you've got the ambulance service, what else is there? And we found a lovely picture of a RNLI Land Rover in dark blue. And that's a very nice colour in Lego, so I wasn't having it at first, but he convinced me. He can be very convincing. And we built this Land Rover. And here the wheels didn't match. I didn't have any Lego wheels that would fit. So this is another example of using the rim of one type of wheel and then stretching a tyre around it to make the right size wheels and sort of knobbly off-road wheels for this Land Rover. There is an emergency service that calls itself the 4th emergency service. Even though they might be the 5th or the 6th, and maybe they're not really an emergency service. I mean, Dino Road would be an emergency service if, you know, they could. It's an AA van, as I hope you can recognize. That's the real one, and that's my Lego version of it. And there's a funny story about this as well, at least I think it's funny. I was in the UK in July, and I just built that, and we took a long trip from Portsmouth to York, and we saw dozens of AA vans, and they all had black letters. And I just spent a lot of time working these white letters into my van. No, I've done it wrong. We were in York at a show, and I showed it there, and I was thinking, oh no, white letters. They used to have white letters. And this family came up to my table, and the little girl said, "Look, Daddy, there's your van." I said, "Hey, he may work for the AA." So I approached the gentleman, and I asked him about the white letters, and he said, "Yeah. They used to have them in 2006. And there might still be some out there with white letters, so it is accurate. Anyway, if you want to have a closer look at the ones that I've shown you here, and at a few other slightly less conventional emergency vehicles, you're welcome to come over to the main hall, and of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So, thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the talk.